We're back. Like again, folks, this has never happened before. So I'm you muted. This has never happened before, folks. So what's causing it? I'll just have to take that up with Apple. But you were saying on goes the show, not to be stopped. So yeah, you were saying about the league and its power.
We were talking about the power of football and how it's built TV networks, and now the expansion in franchise values are a reflection of more revenue, and ultimately a good chunk of that revenue will find its way into the pockets of players.
In terms of the revenue and the future of the NFL itself, what does it say about there are people who are actually predicting that the NFL would not survive? I remember as recently as a couple of years ago, and obviously that's not the case. The NFL is with us, and it's quite healthy. What does it say from your standpoint?
So if you look at the revenue sources, stadia get more and more sophisticated in becoming sites for multiple revenue streams. So you have new stadia going up all the time in arenas. And what they have is luxury boxes for people that have that type of revenue, or corporations. They have premium seating that offers more amenities. They have naming rights. They have fantasy of football. They have memorabilia. All of it's skyrocketing, and we're exploring new ways of enjoying football. So look for virtual reality to take a fan into the actual experience itself. We have new leagues that allow fans to select the owners and coaches themselves. And we've got all sorts of ways to do it. And we're increasing the number of female fans. 41% of regular season games viewers were women, and as high as 50% for Sunday night football. So we've now got women sitting there who are not just being with their significant others watching a game. They're hardcore football fans too. So the popularity and appeal continues to spread, and there's blue skies ahead.
How is this going to impact stadium development in the future? Because, as you know, the NFL for much of its life relied on public funding, and Commissioner Goodell made a commitment to, wherever possible, of course, the Vegas example is an outlier, use private funding. Does this allow the NFL to continue on to that, or how is that going to shake out in your view?
Well, I think that private funding is the model for the future. Very few municipalities facing all of the stress they are trying to run budgets, especially in a pandemic time with the ailing economy and tax revenues more difficult to find. These stadia will be privately funded. They're great revenue stream creators. The new ones are so state-of-the-art that they have all the bells and whistles that make attending an event easier and more exciting. They focus on fan experience. So you're not, as a fan of a certain team, going to see endless amounts of victories and no defeats. So the question becomes, what is your experience from the time you get to the parking lot to the time you get back into your home? And so the wise people are carefully programming every part of that and creating more and more revenue opportunities, from photo booths to things that can be done inside the stadium as well as watch the game.
How about on the side of sponsors? Even in my thought, basically, is that the NFL got a deal that's great for it. But we're still in the middle of the pandemic. A number of businesses are taking a hit. How long do you think it will take the businesses to come back so that the NFL can realize what Commissioner Goodell and the ownership had voted on, I think a few years ago, having that $25 million kind of conic around each NFL city in terms of the objective annual sponsorship or local revenue it was wanted to take in? Because my theory is that if they can achieve that, then they'll be back completely whole and then some,
I think that some of this depends on factors neither of us can accurately predict, which is how fast the vaccine is effective, whether we reach herd immunity, and what stadium attendance will be like next year. It could very well be close to normal. And if that's the case, then you've got amazing television revenue, amazing live gate. You have 40 to 50 million people playing fantasy football. You have the merchandise and memorabilia more popular than ever. You've got in the future the whole concept of gambling that will end up being integrated into stadia. So you have more and more revenue streams. And as for corporations, advertising, as I said, the networks understand that for their long-term health, they need to have a loss leader like football. So even if the ad revenue is a little slower to return to pre-pandemic levels, it will still, the teams will still get their share of the national TV contract. Remember, Zenny, when I started back in 1975, each team has its share of the national TV contract, and unlike the other sports, they share the main revenue source equally, because the main revenue source for baseball and basketball would be the 162 or 82 games and the local media. And last year it was close to $200 million. So the revenue is so high that the sport's in good shape. Now, I always worry that in the future, if you don't have fans playing the game when they grow up or attending the games live, then the bond won't be sustained. I've always said that if they would just be forward-looking and take 10,000 seats out of the mix every week and give them to working families and people with lower incomes, they build the future of the fan base.
How about the NFL draft? Because this year the draft is in Cleveland, although I'm not sure how they're going to handle media. I suppine it will be something like the Super Bowl where it was virtual. But is that the first test case for whether or not football is returning?
No, I think the ratings will end up being very high for the draft. They were high last year, but it's a television show. It's the whole concept of having people gathered in a green room on the stage of Madison Square Garden or anywhere else and coming out one by one when they're selected, that's gone away. And if you remember, like when I went to Tennessee, they had hundreds of thousands of people out on the street. Yeah. Chicago had a similar thing. That's why they rotated it instead of just having it in New York. But it's still got all the thrills. And this year, there's a number of top skill position players that make it glamorous. The first four picks could be quarterbacks, and they're wide receivers galore. So it's a razzle-dazzle type draft. And the NFL has become very skilled at building it up as programming in the whole week prior and creating not simply draft night, but a series of nights, and it runs for 3 days. And it really is the most exciting time in the life of a player. There's nothing besides going to the Super Bowl that replicates that high. So it's got inherent drama, and draft time is not real time. It's like water torture time. While players are waiting, every second seems like a minute, every minute seems like an hour.
You've got another great set of clients coming up, by the way. And so I know you're quite excited for the draft again.
Yes. we have the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year, Talanoa Hufanga. We've got a running back from Virginia Tech that led the nation. So it'll be, and we've actually absorbed another firm from Baltimore.
Yeah, congratulations. Yeah, talk about that. Yeah, congratulations. Yeah.
It's a way of expanding our reach, which occurs with Dan Safran and Samantha Stankovic and other folks that we're taking in under our umbrella to have more reach. And we recently did a deal with Ron Burkle, the Ukaipa Partners, that allies us with someone who owns quite a bit. Burkle owns the Pittsburgh Penguins. He owns an entertainment agency, a football agency, Soho Clubs, and a number of different types of entities. But it gives us, including a big production company, so it's going to help players with creating their own content supply and owning it. It's going to make advances in marketing and ultimately be a good fulcrum for expansion.
And something, as we, out of respect for your time, but I think is quite a fascinating development that is related to this increase in franchise value. You have some, and this happened before, you had old line owners like the Rooneys that at some point are going to have to repurchase their shares. And I believe the NFL had to make an adjustment in its rules to accommodate them. I think what was 11 or 12 years ago. Do you see that happening again, given the way these franchise values are going? When does it stop?
I think most of the owners, the newer owners, are buying at this value. So where Seattle and Tampa Bay back in 1976 cost $16.5 million, and Carolina and Jacksonville were $130 million. And then there was the bump to Houston in 2000, which was $650 million. You now have virtually all the franchises above $1 billion, and some of them much higher. And this group of newer owners all were successes in another type of business. You mentioned the Rooneys, who essentially owned the team, or Bill Bidwell, essentially his major asset was the team. And the Maras back in the New York days. But the prices are so prohibitive now that you have billionaires buying these teams who were very successful in some other area of the economy. And so they bought in at these values, so those adjustments are not as needed.
So basically the NFL is going to be around for another 30 years, you think? Or and do you think we'll never see black ownership out of it? I'm working on an organization or group that's trying to do that.
Absolutely. We've done a very poor job on diversity in the NFL. To have as few African-American coaches as we do, and as few front office personnel, much better, not general managers. But if you look at the diversity in the overall hiring of franchises, it's really good. It's reflective of the communities. But you look at ownership, our client Patrick Mahomes just bought into the Kansas City Royals baseball team. I saw LeBron James just bought into the Boston Red Sox. But there is great wealth, income disparity, but great wealth in certain parts of the Black community, and there certainly is going to be a African American or Black run franchise in the future, and it just makes sense. And we've got to do a better job finding younger coaches that get brought along and become coordinators so they're poised to become head coaches, in the minority community. And better training, they at least have the building blocks in place so that we can have more Black general managers, team presidents, and all the rest of it. And we actually had better numbers on head coaches earlier in our history than we do now.
Yeah.
And there's no real reason that we shouldn't have much more.
Why is it that it seems that we get to a point where it's improvement, and yet, and I'm trying to say this in a way that is clean, if you will, and yet all of a sudden it falls apart? Is it what's going on?
I think the Rooney Rule has to be active, and just telling people that they have to talk to in hiring a Black candidate is not enough. You really need a program earlier to create more Black coaches and then more Black coordinators, because it's the coordinators off of winning teams that are getting hired now. It's Sean McVay here in Los Angeles at 32. So you have to start in the pipeline much earlier. It reminds me of when I was working with Warren Moon, and there was just a few African-American quarterbacks. Part of the problem at that time was that a lot of the places Blacks were starting at quarterback at the collegiate level was they were playing a spread offense. They were smaller athletes who were tossing the ball off or had great running ability. You needed to start earlier at high school and college and get 6'4", 6'3", strong-armed Black African-American athletes into that pipeline. So you started having them, and now we've gotten to the point where African-American quarterbacks are really dominating the league in many ways. I mean, the last Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Deshaun Watson. I mean, it's are playing at the highest level, winning Super Bowls, and even more important, there are African American backup quarterbacks.
Right.
So that you don't have to be the greatest superstar in the world to still be considered, as a possible backup or replacement. So. What it needed was a whole lot of development at the high school and younger level to create enough pressure with these talented athletes playing in pro sets or at least spread offenses that they'd make it.
I'm curious, though, because something I thought about 15 years ago when I first realized in the California parlance that by 2040 we would have a majority minority state in California. I thought, we're going to get to a point where a white counterpart will believe that the resources are not there for them and they will protest. I had that idea 15 years ago. And, today, we have seeds of that all over the place. And I'm concerned, Leigh, that we seem to make these pockets of progress in terms of true integration, friends and everything. I grew up with a great interracial fan base, or friend base, I mean. But it pains me that now I feel like we're being torn asunder, primarily for economic reasons, because from April till now, we've had more jobless assignments or claims than any time in our history, save for the Depression. And what do we do to get the integration right? Because I don't want to see a country where you have my, white friends here, Asian friends here, we're not talking to each other, and it becomes, a zero-sum game all the time, and no one enjoys the United States anymore.
So I grew up very much in the same atmosphere as you. There was a federal aid housing project across the street from my elementary school. So the world always looked like Blacks and Latinos and Asians to me, because it's all I really ever knew. One of the problems today is that the information sources that people are using to define reality are so different. So you have one group over here who's watching CNN and MSNBC and reading daily newspapers, another group that's watching Fox, reading Breitbart, AON, and getting their news from different sources. So these two visions of reality are going away from each other. And so theories that one group thinks are absolutely absurd, fanciful, and made up, another group devoutly believes. And so that's a problem, because the expansion of television and the expansion of media have given certain people the ability to simply reinforce their point of view without considering others, right?
Yes.
And so where I think that QAnon is crazy, other people fervently believe that. And the key to listening is to have, to the whole thing, is to have a shared vision that we're all Americans. We are all Americans, and it shouldn't take a war or someone invading to remind us of all the commonality we have. And instead, people have been infused with this passion and sense of victimization that everybody can't be a victim. It's a pretty good country in all sorts of ways. Never perfect, always improving, with a history that you can read clearly so you understand what the flaws are. But oh my God, would you trade and go live in Russia or China or in a poverty-stricken country? So I think that's the problem. And athletes can be part of the solution, because to the degree that, as you know, our practice is about role modeling, and to the degree it's about triggering imitative behavior, which is inclusion and tolerance and the rest of it, it's great. And sports are also something that can take people from a variety of political backgrounds, a variety of ethnic, racial, religious backgrounds, and put them all together, to root for the Rams or the Dodgers or the Lakers here. And we've got commonalities. So, but there's been very little emphasis on how much we share in common, and everything is about the issues that divide us. I don't choose my friends on the basis of their political views.
Do you know who created QAnon, by the way? The Trump administration 2016 campaign. I got that from Rick Gates. I had him on as a guest 3 times. It's something else we've done. Hey, before we close, any thoughts on what Deshaun Watson is experiencing?
So the problem is that if an athlete experiences some accusation about their conduct, if they don't have a good damage control strategy, which includes getting your arms around all the facts, finding out what's actually true and what's not. And then if it's behavior that an athlete feels is not representative of him, coming out very quickly with an apology, and with the added feature that they're going to take steps to remediate the behavior. So someone who's drunk driving will go to AA. Someone getting in a fight will go to anger management. Someone with domestic abuse will go to anger management plus go to sensitivity training. But if you allow the this repetitive news cycle to keep recycling and republishing it, people will believe, because they've seen it multiple times, people will believe that something is true. So I don't know, we don't know what's true or not in a accusation of either domestic violence or harassment. It's always he said, she said. but if you have vulnerability as an athlete, you best be out front, accept your responsibility, and try to get the healing going again. And if you're actually innocent in some ways, you better get out and say that too.
Watson's attorney said today that at least one of the filings is false, and he believes that the other ones are false. And I have to candidly say, Leigh, I've really studied this from a guy who was that close to law school myself and shepherdized cases. I would be very surprised if I were aggressive as a lawyer. I would try to get Tony Busby disbarred. That's how bad it looks.
You mean the lawyer who filed suit?
Yes, sir. Yeah, it's that bad.
Again, so if you're trying to preserve Watson's reputation, then, and you know or believe this to be false, get out there quickly and get your face on television and tell your story. Because otherwise, what happens is people don't read the paper or watch very closely at times. You've done a lot more research into this than just the average person. The average person is just going to associate the name with the accusation. So you got to get out quickly and don't speak before an athlete in crisis knows the facts. But if if you believe the facts to be different than the accusation, get out there and tell the world.
Sound advice from Leigh Steinberg. Hey, great to see you, my friend, and continued success. Hey, stick around in the background because I just want to share some good news with you. Hey, everybody, thanks for tuning in. And this is live, but we're also going to take out those parts that went kind of left, and this is going to be nice and clean within moments. Subscribe to Zinni62, and tomorrow we have the Oakland Chief of Police, Lerone Armstrong, is our guest at 1 o'clock Pacific, 4 o'clock on the East. We're quite excited. Leigh, stick around. Thanks a lot, and go Bears.
Go Bears.